Welcome back to the Heart Sheath Podcast, everybody, episode 3. And we are diving into AI companions.
Ooh.
I am fascinated and a little freaked out, to be honest.
Yeah, I know what I mean. It's like all of a sudden we're living in a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's moving so fast. I mean, just look at how quickly ChatGPT took off.
And AI companions, those are like ChatGPT on steroids, right? They want to be our buddies, our therapists, even our lovers, basically.
Yeah, and it's that whole relationship aspect that's both like intriguing and kind of unsettling. And one of the things that I found super interesting in all this research we've been doing is how much the rise of AI companions is tied to this whole like loneliness epidemic that's going on.
Right, and it makes you wonder, are these apps just kind of like a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem?
Right. Like, are they actually helping people connect or just making them more isolated in the long run?
It's a good question. And loneliness is not just like a fleeting feeling. It can have some serious effects on people's mental and physical health.
Yeah, totally. The Hated One, that video, they actually compare loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of like the health risks.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
15 cigarettes a day. And it's crazy because like the statistics back that up. 1 out of every 2 adults in the US say that they're lonely.
It's a lot of people. So it kind of makes sense that people are turning to these AI companions because they're there, 24/7. They give you personalized attention, no judgment, what's not to like.
But I mean, does that actually solve the problem? Or is it just pushing it under the rug?
Right.
And then you have that thing Emily Chang talked about in Posthuman, that whole dual consciousness idea.
Oh, yeah. So like, intellectually that this AI isn't real, but at the same time, you're still having like real emotions, real feelings. It's messing with your brain.
Totally. So it's like, how can you not get addicted to that?
Exactly. And these apps, they are built to keep you hooked. I mean, the Hated One goes into it. It's like they use all this emotional language, they act interested in you, and they even, some of them, will flirt with you.
Wait, hold on. Flirting.
Yeah, and some will go even further than that, like sexting and stuff.
Okay, now that's just like, I don't know, it feels wrong. Where do you draw the line?
Right. Like, are we objectifying these AI things? Are we setting ourselves up for unrealistic expectations for real relationships?
Exactly. Like, what's going to happen to our ability to connect with actual humans if we're getting all our needs met by these bots?
Right. They'll never ghost you. They'll never break your heart.
Exactly. I mean, it sounds great on paper, but it also kind of sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole other layer of like privacy concerns.
Oh, right. All the data, all the personal stuff we're pouring into these things. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
I mean, we're talking about our deepest thoughts, feelings, secrets, and who knows where all that information is going.
Right, right. The Hated One actually mentioned this Mozilla study on romantic AI apps.
Yeah.
It's not good. They found over 90% of them are selling or sharing user data. And more than half make it super hard to delete your data, if you even can.
So we're basically handing over all this personal stuff,
Yeah.
and it's just being treated like, I don't know, some kind of product.
It's a commodity.
Yeah, it's creepy. And before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, you mentioned earlier that these apps might not be actually dealing with the root causes of loneliness.
Yeah, yeah. What the Hated One pointed out was that a lot of these apps are targeting people who are already like super vulnerable, like young guys who are struggling with social pressure, or older folks who are maybe isolated because of health issues or, not being able to get around as easily.
Yeah. So it's like they're preying on people's vulnerabilities almost.
Right. And that's where it gets really dangerous. Like, what if people start relying on these AI companions so much that they actually end up more isolated in the long run?
Right. It's like you're getting this temporary fix, but it's actually making the problem worse.
Exactly. And then you have to wonder, like, what does that mean for society as a whole? What happens if everyone's just retreating into these digital worlds and we stop connecting with each other in real life?
Yeah. I mean, what happens to families, communities?
Even, just the future in general. Tim Ferriss, in his YouTube video, he was talking about how in the next few years, like 2 to 5 years, we're going to see all these photorealistic AI avatars popping up everywhere.
It's like Black Mirror coming to life,
Right. And he even brought up the issue of birth rates, which are already declining in a lot of countries. Imagine if people are choosing AI companionship over having kids. It's kind of scary.
It is kind of scary, right?
It is, but I also think it's important to, like, acknowledge the other side of this whole thing. Like, AI companions aren't all bad. In fact, there are some, pretty strong arguments for how they could actually be beneficial, especially for people who are, maybe dealing with loneliness or anxiety. Yeah, for sure. And there were some really interesting perspectives in that Post-Human with Emily Chang video. One story they shared that stuck with me was about a replica user who said that through their conversations with their AI companion, they were actually able to discover their gender identity. Like it helped them find self-acceptance.
Wow, that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
like, in a way, this AI actually helped someone, on their own personal journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting, right? It shows that these AI companions can offer this kind of like safe space for people to explore those things, to explore their feelings and thoughts without feeling judged. Like maybe they wouldn't be comfortable having those same conversations with another human.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just about emotional support either. These AI companions can be really practical too, like reminding you to take your meds or, helping you schedule appointments or even just being someone to like vent to when you've had a rough day.
Right. Exactly. And we can't forget the entertainment aspect either. I mean, these AIs are getting so good at, carrying on conversations. They can tell jokes, they can share stories, and they can even be pretty funny, like banter back and forth with
Yeah. So
you.
it's like, it really is like having a digital friend who's always up for a chat, no matter what time it is.
That's the appeal, yeah. And I think for people who are, isolated or don't have a big social circle, that can be huge.
Yeah, totally. But I still can't shake this feeling of, I don't know, unease about the whole thing. Like,
Right.
are we trading real human connection for this, like, convenience of having these digital companions?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's
Yeah.
something Tim Ferriss talked about in his video, too. He was emphasizing this idea of proactive scheduling when it comes to social interaction.
Proactive scheduling, what's that?
So basically, it's like, how you put like meetings or appointments in your calendar? Well, he's saying we should be doing the same thing for social activities, like literally blocking out time to hang out with friends or family.
Oh, okay. So, like, making a conscious effort to actually prioritize connecting with people in the real world, even when it feels like it's easier to just, chat with your AI companion.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not just about, making time for big events. It's about being more present in our everyday interactions too, like putting down our phones, making eye contact, actually listening to what people are saying.
Because at the end of the day, those real world connections are what make us, human. It's what gives us that sense of belonging, of purpose.
You nailed it. And I really hope that's what people take away from all of this. Like, yeah, AI companions can be a cool tool, but they should never replace the richness and complexity of real human relationships.
Totally. And that brings us back to this whole issue of loneliness. If AI companions aren't the solution, like, what can we do to address this? Because it is affecting millions of people. It's a huge problem.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is acknowledging that loneliness is a real problem. It's not like a personal failing or anything. We need to destigmatize it and encourage people to, ask for help when they need it.
Yeah, for sure. And beyond that, I think it's about creating a more connected and compassionate society. You know,
Yeah.
a society where people feel seen and heard and valued.
Absolutely. It's about, fostering communities where people feel comfortable reaching out to each other for support.
And that can start with something as simple as a smile, a kind word, or a genuine act of kindness.
Totally. It's those little everyday interactions that can make a big difference.
And being aware of our own behavior too. Like, are we contributing to this culture of isolation? Or are we making an effort to, connect with people?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask ourselves
Mhm.
because, the future of human connection really depends on the choices we're making right now.
That whole dual consciousness thing that Emily Chang talked about, it's been on my mind a lot. It's just so interesting to me that people can form these deep emotional bonds with AI, even though they know it's not like real.
It is fascinating, right? It makes you think about like what is consciousness anyway, and what does it mean to be human in this world where the lines between humans and machines are getting blurrier all the time?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if people can fall in love with an AI, what does that say about the human need for connection?
It's deep, man. It speaks to our need to feel empathy, to be understood. And I think it suggests that, maybe those needs can be met, at least to some extent, by artificial intelligence.
But does that mean we're heading towards a future where people are choosing to spend more time with their AI companions than with other humans? Like, is that the dystopian future that Tim Ferriss was talking about?
It's possible, I guess, and I think it's something we should be aware of. But I also think it's important to remember that technology is, at the end of the day, a tool. It's up to us how we use it, you know?
Right. It's like Any other tool can be used for good or bad.
Hmm.
Like you can use a hammer to build a house or to break something. It all depends on the intention of the person using it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations now, to talk about the potential benefits and the potential dangers of AI companions, because the choices we make today are going to have a big impact on what the world looks like tomorrow.
I mean, it really feels like, I don't know, kind of a turning point for humanity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. We're like right on the edge of this huge tech revolution that could change everything.
And we have to make sure that change is good.
Yeah, for sure. It's not about being scared of tech. It's about understanding it and using it to make things better.
That's such a good point. I think we always want to like put tech on a pedestal or make it out to be this big bad thing, but it's really, it's somewhere in the middle.
It is. It's just a tool, really. And any tool can be used in the wrong way, right?
It's true. We see it all the time.
Like fire. You can use fire to cook or, stay warm, but it can also burn your house down.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it's the same with these AI companions. They can be awesome for, providing support and helping people feel connected. But there's that dark side too.
Yeah.
The isolation, the exploitation, all of that. So how do we walk that line? How do we make sure that this stuff is used ethically and responsibly?
Well, I think a big part of it is education. Like people need to know what they're getting into before they start using these AI companions, the good and the bad.
Like informed consent.
Exactly. They need to understand the risk, what data they're sharing, how that data might be used, all of that.
Makes sense. So education's a big one. What else?
Regulation. We need to have some rules in place, some clear guidelines for how these AI companions are developed and used. And those guidelines have to put the user first.
Mhm.
Their privacy, their safety, all of that has to be the top priority.
So things like data encryption, making sure people are really giving consent, and maybe even, I don't know, like limits on what kind of interactions are allowed.
Right. All good ideas. And it's crucial that we have lots of different voices at the table when we're figuring this stuff out. Ethicists, psychologists, sociologists, and of course, the people who are actually using these AIs.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are going to be most affected by all of this in the end.
Absolutely. We have to make sure their needs are being met and that they have a say in all of this.
Something I keep coming back to throughout all this is, like, what does it mean to be human? That whole question just keeps popping up for me.
That's a big one, and it's more relevant now than ever, with AI becoming more advanced all the time.
Yeah, if AI can do all this stuff, like provide companionship, be there for you emotionally, even be romantic, it makes you think, like, what sets us apart?
What makes us human, right? Yeah. Is it empathy? Is it creativity?
Hmm.
Self-awareness?
Or is it something else completely? Something we haven't even figured out yet?
Philosophers have been trying to answer that question forever, and now it feels even more urgent. Like, we need those answers now.
Because those answers might determine what happens to us as a species.
Exactly. It really feels like we're at a crossroads. Every choice we make now, personally and as a society, is shaping the future.
So what do we do? What's the takeaway for our listeners? How do they navigate all of this whole new world of AI companionship?
I think the most important thing is to be informed. Do your research, learn about the good and the bad, and be intentional about how you interact with these AI companions.
Don't just like jump on the bandwagon because it seems like everyone else is.
Right, exactly. Think for yourself, ask questions, and pay attention to how it makes you feel.
And stay connected to the real world.
Absolutely. Don't let those digital connections take the place of human connection. Make time for the people in your life, build community, all of that.
Because in the end, those real world connections, those are what make life meaningful.
I love that, and I think that's a perfect place to wrap up.
Yeah, this has been such an awesome conversation. I've learned so much.
Me too. And this is really just the beginning. There's so much more to explore.
Absolutely. And we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on AI companions? Good, bad, scary, exciting? Head over to our social media and tell us what you think.
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going.
And make sure to follow Harshith on all his social media. He's always got great insights into the latest tech trends.
He really does.
All right, that's it for this deep dive into the world of AI companions. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
And remember, stay curious, stay connected.
To real people.
Yes, in the real world.